and welcome back to my corner of the internet. I'm Shannon, and today I have another book talk video to share with you guys, and today we are talking about The Favorite Daughter by Kaira Rouda. At least I hope that's how you say her name. Anyway, I read another book by Kaira about a year or two ago, and it was called Best Day Ever. And I actually did a book review on it here on this channel. I'll link it down below in case you like how this one sounds and you want to hear a review on her other one. That one was a very interesting book, again, about sort of a family, a marriage, and this book is also about that, as you can kind of tell from the title. One thing that I loved about Best Day Ever was that it had a very, very, very unreliable narrator. And I love that. I love that in a story. When I write myself, I don't really write that, but I love reading it. And The Favorite Daughter also has a very unreliable narrator, even more so than Paul from Best Day Ever. So this book, you guys, this was a doozy. It was a doozy. It starts off simple enough, you know, sadly, but simple enough. We meet a woman named Jane, who is wife to a man named David and mother to two daughters, one who is recently deceased. That daughter's name was Mary, and the daughter that's still alive's name is Betsy, and she is about to graduate from high school. In fact, this book begins 4 days before graduation, and it ends on the night of graduation. So we start off, we meet Jane, we, you know, like I just said, learn that she is a grieving mother. We learn that the 1-year anniversary of Mary's passing is about to come, and there's going to be a memorial service. And we learn that the past year has been really difficult for Jane. She's been seeing a therapist, and she's going through what that therapist calls complicated grief. And, you know, stemming from the loss of a child. So Jane spent most of this past year very medicated and just kind of in a haze. But now she's feeling stronger. She feels like enough time has passed and that she's ready to come off of the drugs. And as things begin to unfold and we get to learn about Jane's life, past and present, we learn that Jane's not exactly who we think she is. We learn that Jane's very controlling and very possessive of her family members. We quickly learn that on her phone, she has an app where she can read private texts that are being sent to her children's phone. The app set up for her husband's phone. And quickly she sees a text from their lawyer, or an email from their lawyer, something like that. Oh no, a letter. A letter actually came in the mail. And Jane mentions that normally David gets his mail forwarded to his office, but this piece came to the house. And inside of the envelope, she finds a congratulatory letter from the lawyer saying that everything worked out and congratulations, the house is yours, and it's got an address for the house. And she looks it up, and it's this gorgeous multi-million-dollar house. They already live in a very wealthy neighborhood in California. Whatever it is David does, he does very well with it. So she starts getting very excited, making plans, saying how she can't wait for David to surprise her with this new home. She feels like finally, you know, they're going to get a fresh start after everything that they've been through with Mary. But then on the other hand, she also mentions that David's having an affair with his secretary, and she knows this because she has his texts tapped and she can read them. And as she's reading them, it's very clear that the secretary and David bought the house for them. And David keeps telling the secretary, like, only 4 more days, 3 more days, 2 more days, and then we can be together. And then on the other hand, we have Betsy, who, you know, she's getting ready to graduate high school. She's very withdrawn. She's very sullen. She wants nothing to do with her mother. There's a lot of tension there. That's not really explained at first, but then it's kind of brushed off as, well, you know, grief, or she was always jealous of Mary and now this or that. The thing is, everything that Jane says, she's constantly contradicting herself. She will state something as a fact, and then very quickly later on in the story, she will say the exact opposite. And she'll address the reader like, oh, you didn't think I really meant that other thing I said, did you? And things like that. And I have fun with that kind of unreliability where you don't really know who is who and what's what. We learned the circumstances of Mary's death pretty early on. We know that her and Betsy, after an argument, went on a hike together and they continued arguing. Betsy eventually left, and then Mary fell from a cliff to her death. And this was just after Mary's first year of university, when she was home for the summer for a few weeks before she went to start an internship. As the story carries on, we learned that Mary was actually adopted. There had been a woman who worked for David's family, so he came from a wealthy family. Jane did not. So this woman who worked for David's family became pregnant when David and Jane were very early on in their marriage, and it became important for David to adopt this child because the woman who was pregnant, her name was Elizabeth, so she was looking for a family who could do it. And it became, like I said, very important for David to be that family. And Jane eventually gave into it. Papers were drawn up that stated that the woman Elizabeth would have no contact with the child. But before Mary died, Jane learned that in the months leading up to her death, Mary reached out to the woman, with her father's help, to the woman who had been her birth mother. And she found out that that woman was now a doctor, which is what Mary wanted to do. In university, she was studying pre-med. So she knew the woman was a doctor, and they really hit it off because they had so much in common. And Mary was an adult now, so it's not like the contracts were being broken, because now Mary's an adult, she can do what she wants. And so right before she died, she was getting ready to move to Los Angeles, where her birth mother lived, to do an internship with her and to stay with her for the summer. And Jane didn't like that one bit. In fact, once she got word of it, she went to confront Elizabeth at the hospital where she worked. And it didn't go well. She was threatening. She was very aggressive, and Elizabeth told Mary about that. It's in a second confrontation with this birth mother that she tells Jane that David was the biological father of Mary, and that's why he was so adamant on him and his wife, Jane, adopting the baby. Jane's obviously very upset. And she tries, she does the math, and she realizes that that was in their first year of marriage that David was having an affair, his first affair. So she's very angry, and she's teetering on the actual edge, or has been teetering on the actual edge for a very long time. As you learn more about her and her past, you get the feeling that she's been inching towards that edge for years, maybe for decades. But it's now that just, multiple betrayals from her husband, and then the perceived betrayal from her daughter Mary, and it's just too much. And she's really on the edge now. There's also this thing with Jane where she's a very beautiful woman. She's in her early 40s. She's very beautiful. She knows she's very beautiful. When she lived in a southern state. She left there when she was very young. She came to California to become a movie star, but instead she, met David fairly quickly, and they hit it off and got married. And now, 20 years later, she's still very beautiful, and she uses that to her benefit any way she can, whether that's manipulating strangers to do her bidding or whatever it is. And she says things about how badly people want her and how they're flirting with her, when, as we're reading the interaction, we can see that's not the case. So finally what happens is she starts getting notes delivered to her mailbox. Well, the first one comes, is put in her purse when she's at the memorial for Mary. She comes home, she opens it up, and it says something like, "Betsy knows more than she's saying," or something like that. And then a few days later, she gets another one in the mailbox that says, you know, Betsy was there when Mary fell, ask her what she knows, something like that. And so this kind of sets Jane off in trying to frame her own daughter, or at least she starts to believe that Betsy had something to do with Mary's death, when that certainly doesn't seem like it's the case based on everything we've learned so far about Betsy. It seems like she misses her sister very much, and yeah, her and her mom have a tumultuous relationship, but that's just how the things are right now. You know, she's going through a rough time, and like I said, her mother is literally hanging by a thread. So I'm gonna say now is a good time to click off of this video if you do not want any spoilers. If you think that this is a book you'd like to read, I definitely recommend it. It kept me guessing. I kept wondering what things we were going to learn, what things were going to be revealed, and a lot is revealed. So yes, but click away now. And let me know in the comments if you plan on reading it. So for anyone who's left, let's get into the spoilers. So Jane quickly gets to work trying to get the police to pin Mary's death on Betsy. She is at the point now where she wants to ruin her husband, ruin him. You know, now we're like 2 days to graduation, 1 day to graduation, and she knows, even though she keeps going back and forth, she keeps saying like, "Oh, I can't wait for David to surprise me with the new house." And then she's also like, "Kylie, that bitch, she's moving into my house." So like, she knows it. Kylie's his secretary, in case I hadn't said her name before. So it's like she knows what's actually going on, but then she slides into a different headspace where she doesn't know what's going on. And there were some parts that caused me a bit of anxiety because her going back and forth was making me very nervous, which is the mark of a good book. So as graduation is crawling closer and closer, we learn that she'd been spending months digging up dirt about David's girlfriend, Kylie, his secretary, and she finds some really, really, really dark dirt where she was a con artist and a scammer. And the night before the graduation, when she can see that they are both at the house, because she is stalking them all the time, she can see that they're at the house. She writes up an anonymous note and she puts it through their door so that Kylie will find it. And it's basically telling Kylie that, you know, everything that she knows, but it's anonymous, but spelling out everything that Jane has learned about Kylie and telling her that she's going to be calling the cops, so she better get out of there. Then the next day comes and it's graduation day, and everyone is gathered around at the school, and David is checking his phone because, you know, he's worried about Kylie. He hasn't heard from her all day. She didn't show up to work. And while, you know, David's definitely a bad guy in this situation, he's been having affairs since their first year of marriage. Like, he's not a good guy in this story, but at the same time, you're kind of rooting for him to get away from her because she is not okay. And so his parents are also there because, you know, it's their granddaughter's graduation, and they've always hated Jane since the very beginning. And she comments on it like she wished they had been able to form a relationship, her and his parents, but they had her figured out right from the start. So anyway, the police are there, and Jane thinks it's because of all of the notes and clues that she's given them that led to Betsy being the murderer. After the ceremony, as everyone's filing out, the detective comes over and says, you know, we're taking you, Betsy, down to the station, and we're going to take your parents as well. They get down there. They put Jane in a room, and as they're talking to her, you know, she's asking like, oh, poor Betsy, I'll visit her in prison. Like, I hope she's okay in there. But what Jane doesn't know is that there's been a witness who's come forward after all this time, who was there at the park on the day that Mary died after Betsy left. And this witness saw Jane push her own daughter off the cliff because she felt so betrayed by her daughter finding her birth mother that she wasn't going to let her go. She felt like Elizabeth was a threat to her and her relationship with her daughter, and she had this kind of, if I can't have her, no one can mentality, and she pushes her to her death. And so the cops have her there, and they tell her that they have proof that she was the one that did it. And the cops come in and they're putting her in cuffs, and she's still saying like, oh, tell Betsy I'll visit her in prison. Everything will be fine. Even as she's being led down the hallway in cuffs, she's thinking about how now that her daughter's graduated high school, she'll have more time to herself, and maybe she should get new headshots and try once again to make it in Hollywood, even though she's being taken down the hallway to a jail cell where she'll probably spend the rest of her life. Like, her mind's just gone and she can't process what's actually happening. So that's how that ends. And it was just, it's a really tense story that just keeps you on the edge of your seat, and I really enjoyed it. Even though it was a little stressful, I still really enjoyed it. So that's gonna do it for me for today, you guys. I hope you enjoyed. If you've read this, let me know in the comments down below what you thought of it, or even if you're just planning on reading it, let me know that in the comments as well. Anyway, I hope you have a fantastic weekend, and I will see you on Monday. Bye.